Begin with the Heart Sutra in English. Thus I have heard. At one time, the Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of Vulture Peak Mountain, with a great gathering of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was absorbed in the samadhi of the many aspects of phenomena called profound appearance. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, saw the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. And through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son of a lineage train who wishes to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva answered the Venerable Shariputra with these words. Shariputra, those men and women of the lineage who wish to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this. The five skandhas should be seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, and compositional factors and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, and having no characteristics, they are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no phenomena. There is no quality of sight and so on until no quality of mind and no quality of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance and so on up to no old age and death and no exhaustion of old age and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no ending, and no path. No wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide by means of the profound perfection of wisdom. And since their minds have no obscurations, they have no fear. Transcending the falsity, they attain nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times have relied upon the perfection of wisdom, and have become true and complete Buddhas of unsurpassable, perfect, and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the profound perfection of wisdom, the mantra of insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, for it is not deceptive. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Teyata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Soha. Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and said to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, noble Avalokiteshvara, that he had spoken well. Well done, O son of the lineage, it is so. O son of the lineage, since it is just so, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva and the entire gathering, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Lamadan Gampo
Jizu Jambe Yangla Chaze Lo Kangi Lo De Chimni Dinde Nyenda Nanda Razebe Chini Tungu Jishi Si Yidi Tuka Lebanze Kanda Sibi Zara Mari Bendo Tunge Jisibi Chozo Gunla Puji Darze Yala Chuju Yande Song Chudra Chedo Nyumo Nyilo Leji Chadu Zuje Mare Mese Donge Nyu Chini Chuze Rede Nam Dene Taji Laju Dash Yonde Luzo Jese Tugu Chuda Chuda Chuni Gende Talu Mese Jambe Yang De Arabazana Di
Om
Arapadanadi
Om
Arapadanadi
Seiden
Kyeji Khenra Vesegi Talu Timo Mbarasene Kadan Dinju Shonlo Tobayi Lodre Bobe Nawa Sedo Se
Saji
Peki Choshen Mendo Dang Rizho Linshi Ninde Yenpa De Sanji Shindo Mide Bewa Yi Chogu Namda Shinla Chubara Shu
Jetsu Lama
Ramba Chenangi Chugu Kala Jinzi Jintene Chidra Tsambe Duje Zemala Sabji Chuji Chawa Avdos Rena Mendela Gane Yada Yami Chudan Zoji Chonan La Chanju Bado Dani Gyalzuji Dagi Jinsu Jibi Tsonangi Rola Benji Sanji Jobara Shu Chudan Zoji Chonan Bado Dani Gyalzuji Dagi Jinsu Jibi Tsonamji Rola Benji Sanji Jobara Shu Chudan Zoji Chonan La Chanju Bado Dani Gyalzuji Dagi Jinsu Jibi Tsonangi Rola Benji Sanji Jobara Shu Yeah. Laso, te peja de la ya shologa, sikji gyada chusum takta dula. Ila.
This letter to the friend by Nagarjuna, the verses, in other words, has 113 verses altogether.
Kada ngazo, gyawa tamze kimbagi, konglo gyada chusum shuyagi sheshe yoro, wadi peja de la chije gyada chusum tu tende sangbore chichungsos.
It's quite a coincidence, and also a very auspicious sign that we are discussing on this 113 verses, which is corresponding to His Holiness's commitment of being, be able to live for 113 years.
Ngazo, kikazo Nyawe dungi tezu shegi yore rwa ta, nyawe dungi tezu shegi yore ta, kisane maashe, ane ta shok kasadi, shok tsikje di gyaju gyanyi nala le desha.
So we're on that verse. Our continuing verse will begin from the verse 82, which will be dealing the next, number of verses that we will be dealing with the explanation of the sufferings of hell realms.
Kaji dhamma parwe tsosu ne, gyumi cheba rapsik kayan je. Simjin kaji ane ta lenge me wangi, nyawe nala ya dhamma sudu chik me tende kasure, durdun tende ngaranzo menda sikirwa, tende ki nala ma sikdiyo zambala ya tende di tsane kapa dhedu gidarwa. Ane kaji chale chebe sangchen dosirwa, jivu zu 제지 중빈 신도 세스라 가지 안에 짜게 된데 초산 전부 된데나라 배디 지도 고만 넘네라 안에 말 제조바나 신주 중빈 쓴다 그래이나 어디나라 뭐 제조바나 신주야게 된데 산예게 동에 된데 여래서 심지 랭에 버시기 가시지
Okay. So now here we read the verse 82. Some are burned in the mass of blazing coals without relent. Their mouths just gaping open, and some are boiled in the great cauldrons made from irons, and tumbling topsy-turvy like a dumpling of rice.
네 파라라야 제나 바파 티와지 예스
So in between, I have a question for all of you.
안가족이 셈지랑 신데 왜 세워 인스 텐데스 여러라 셈지랑 신왜 세워지 아니 지마도다 루보르와레스라 바테조 셈지랑 신라 쇼 말에 지마 루보바레스 텐데 제문데 잠발라야 다 루보르와세야 될 지마데 다주유에 좀 생기시야 요래 양 지마 루보르와세도 당보 셈지랑 신들 쇼요 말에 테네고 지 가소에 녜란다 마스나 쇼네 텐데 제네 아니 nyumong chabre samdang de jigwa tinde yinde zambala ya ani nganzo to simje tamje la ya ani kasore sim sama de zawani ne maje wa cherwa nge junda chanju ki sim dawa de zo la ya ta ya kumji de na ma do jigi be전 chen ma do jigi dige me do nyumong ba de zo tinde ge shuk chimbo thomane khande si ge nas
So we find in the text and all the teachings that we find about the mind, it is commonly accepted or, asserted by saying the nature of one's mind is luminous, and the defilements or the afflictions are, in other words, one's nature of one's mind is untainted by these reflections. In other words, the afflictions are advantageous, which means the afflictions can be removed, because it is, if one's mind is untainted by this, afflictions or the negative thoughts and emotions, it can be removed. It's removable because its very nature, its very existence is advantageous. So now the question is here now, if this is so, why we are unable to generate the virtuous state of mind, virtuous state of mind, why that is happening us, why this is happening to us. When it comes to the virtuous state of mind or the positive states of mind, such as renunciations, generation of bodhicitta, and so forth, we need to engage in vigorous practice to, for emergence of those positive states of mind. Why that is happening? If one's mind is untainted by those negative thoughts and emotions, if our mind is, the nature of our mind is luminous, why that is happening?
You would like an answer from us. Okay. Well, we have this mistaken view of things. And it's a habitual mistaken view. And so we grasp onto things thinking that they are real and concrete in ways that they are not, and that the things we like will stay there. The things that we don't like, we need to get rid of. We have this sense of ourselves as being unchanging and immutable to some degree. And in order to preserve that self and that self's happiness, we do all sorts of things really, which are the exact opposite of what we need to do to reveal that untainted mind. So we occupy ourselves with grasping at things and pushing things away and doing harm rather than doing the things that will expose our luminous mind.
The landed direction.
Nas.
So girl, change law. Shukshambu Shivju Yorubas, Chinjulo below, Pena, Ganza the Chela maybe Chinjulo below Yorubas. Just a D yebe wange, any Semke Ranjin West of a Semke Ranjin West of Kura Ranjin the West of Embe in the layer. A queer and the Chikabjilia, Chinjulo below the Kushuk Chadar of Chuju, Ko one good to Swanch Chene, any Semke Ranjin West of the one mat of it, Dires, Mungo Maris. Just a dingombalia, any go Susan when 즉 배전 숙청부 시제지 전에 아니 단다 로보에 테마틱에 되게 파답 제거레스 되는 정도.
I think that we want to make boundaries between things. And if you listen to the first parts of the Heart Sutra, where it says form is empty and emptiness is form, you would realize that everything, there's no objectivity, there's no object at all that stands by itself. All objects stand because of their reference to other things. And the Heart Sutra makes that in its first stanzas quite clearly. And if we paid attention to that, we would not grasp at things because we would realize that the impermanence and the nature of objects are self-referential.
Okay. kunane kuran len tereshe ta pena ngaranzo ta chik chinjilobe lo ta kanda kanza de chol mebe chinjilobe lo de shukshenbe yode zane ene dige de soso gyulu yebe anda chik semge ranjin wesa wasa ya nguen tugo mares rwa ngundu kyugo mares de sonza ene ngaranzo pena sheri nyungbe tuksma tebe yana sheri nyungbo mige ma jebe na suk tongbo nye liya suk di tongbo dawara suk di nganzo liya tsutubni yobashi nanggo res suk di tsutubni nanggo res da tsutubni yoba nangdi zani de nangwa tsutubni yoba nangwa tarko yomari sede kon suk di tongbo chagi res tongbo os ane de ane chik suk tongbo nili suk sos yang kuni ni da ine karsore da suk koroni pige nguweni tsutubni meba rade ine suk koroni meba mares suk koroni yulu yodandi ngarazo nangwa tardi yo wares ine ku yores jaza nganzo danda moya de dil mongu ni zane che chinangi che kandarab shinambe ne ku tsutubni dobo shinande de zane ane dil migbe lo yongzo chinji lobo chadu wores de chaande chinji lobo lo degi rangi susu ande chik semge ranje wesawade ngoyale ya koken chegen dabshita ko chade wo de sonsa sheri nyingbe kolma su dongbo dongbo ni su le dongbo ni xianma yin no se ade gobe gyumze del deji chi shebre se des ko du songdo.
So I'm being asked to answer the question. We have a luminous mind. And our defects are just bandages that can be removed. Why don't we do that? Is that correct? It's too difficult. It's just really hard to live a modern life with all the responsibilities and to do the practices necessary to remove those bandages. It's just too difficult. So,
Lobo gitna The Moran, then the,
And that shit I mean,
oh, let's. Okay, have you finished, or are you still
Well,
continuing?
not quite, but that was the crux of my answer right there. But here's my question. Okay, we have all these descriptions of how terrible hell is going to be if we don't manage to have a life that prepares us for a human rebirth, the next rebirth. So I'm sure that I have been in those hells many times, many times, right? I have zero memory of it, and it doesn't create fear when I read these descriptions. If it created fear, if there was some sort of memory of how awful the hell realms are, I think it would be a bigger deterrent. But right now, it's just, it doesn't strike me as being a deterrent. It's just like, it sounds horrible and I don't want to go there, but,
Okay.
but it doesn't scare me enough to have a less complicated life.
I
And,
know.
right.
Okay. Chidan the Tangu de Moran the Kislag and the condition number of our dig land, never the Moran and the Yachi some zesha. And the Kursun to seven at the some Koran Yaraji was away and been the Negablia ko Lobu Timothy ko Shuk Chendar Chechi Chendrua ko pen up Kurso the Que Kanda Jik. One Lemazon, one cheddar of Chechene, Depa Celia, Kawashi, Penangaranzu, Nirek, Nagi and the Chik Toy, Nire Toy, Nalia, Chik Karsore, Chik, Tanyamyochi Legoraba, Til Debe in Benele, Naranzu Sem, the Dima, Lobo in it, and the Dimokuranzi and the Pigay Veneta, Tige Debe, Nire Pigay took Kaseji Subsa Chebenele, Cope. Shukcher to the service Tondi to Sonza Nichi Semgeraje was about it, Mundi Kuhelia, Alicia Kabureshas, Morodisudu. Did it? They never there. Down the Denima, the Chavitos, my seven, the much more yet about it, Karomi Gemate, CJ to get Chalor Namendo. Then they aimed at the Sonza, and then she 예외 동해다 다 동해 삼김이 협된데 송제되네 다 소소 다직 대베 다 소소 다직 개와 망부시나리아 딘데 예외 나리아 소소베다 다음에 용사브레스 딘데 용사브르데네 다 단데가블레 소송올이야 베네직 디 단예만 예외 동해 용데베 템바시오라 봐 근체지베 그다 코 축섬제 메데산에 근데 시부 직나서 갤릭면도 다디드 쳔마진 섬서르지마도 지게 신나도 갤릭면도 쓴 송도 예 온다 둥에 디게 디마 대시스타다 다데 고뇨고 시부도 섬섬르 제단 직 대시 걸소르 직 셈마데르 대시 용도 마도 지게 소소 녜메 뇽베 갑리야 녜메 간사 녜베 둥에리 뇽베 직 템바치오로 봐 Tiko ta kopike tildu tamra lhaya mara sonza jingna scaling menus.
Nas. Kuni the Kampala Kasara. The Kampala, the dinner peke Kampala, yours and Kambe or the enter was a machana, Chasar Kuni, those Tomoto dinner. This one.
Today I think it's a little bit cold, Gishla saying. If you're cold, please, grab the blankets or shovels from there and just, wrap around your legs, so it will be better because it's a little bit cold today.
제장아족이 데려와. 네, 제가 다 당분게 제가 다야의 제비나. 안솔라야 다 뉴몽데 당보 심지라시 왜세워데 냠 제단 통만의 냠도 여베이나 안다가르와 대마이베이나 안솔라야 아니 뉴몽도도 배제촌에 맞게걸라다 안솔라 딱다 끼차데요. 이나야 안솔라야 다 대끼면도 하던다 ngi chung gi sim se wa chang ju gi sim se ge le dong ban ni do be lo se ge le ne nga zo be jin chen ma do ji gi me do wa de kan de ji na de nyu mo do zo ma rang xin gi je yong ya ba ge lo do zo ani be zhen ma chen na ma je ya ge de kan de ji na sang nga ran de sam lo de de ko gu do se.
So I always ask the question to myself, and by thinking that even though that our nature of mind is limitless and it is untainted by negative thoughts and emotions, but yet at the same time, the negative thoughts and emotions arises within our continuum effortlessly. We don't have to, it doesn't need to be made any efforts to generate negative thoughts and emotions, but rather it naturally comes into our mind. Whereas generation of renunciations, bodhicitta, and so forth requires a rigorous effort, without which we're unable to generate, renunciations by bodhicittas. So I'm always wondering why this is happening, because our mind is untainted by these negative thoughts and emotions. Why we are unable to, generate renunciations, bodhicitta naturally by themselves, just as negative thoughts and emotions arises naturally by itself within our continuum.
O de son de zamba la ya ka so le de yin de zamba la ya ta ka so le nga ran zo de zambuling de kan la ya jidan zambuling sin ta nga ran zo chulu jamen de ma bo shu ji ro ta nga zo gi da pi na la yin jo gi pi na la yin jo de la ya da chulu xian da nang be chu ma yin ba ge ani 다 힌두기로 대가로야 힌두기다 좀더 좀제지 되는 당가 저기 표현하라 여러 가지 좀더 저 간라야 아니 힌두기 다 되지도 거 여러 테마도 지게 아니 다 출루 현다기 배제도 좀 가서 표현하라 통야면도 근데 인디 좀 발라야 가서 그랬으나 땅 좀 남박이 녀와도 세계 여러 녀와도 마 숨게 여러 와다도 저 송바 나신 아니 다 가서 그래 예배 동에 지 생기 연대야 공배 조선나나 아니 베데 광내 광도 배제 그 베데 넘버 탐지 김배 살아야 줘야 요래서 직체 근데 배 공배 된대지 베데 최담제 락디도 교로라 샤와나신 또 두그래 아니 친진 내송고 연대 된대 그래서네 생기 연대 공배 줘나 야 된대지 줘야 요제 타야 셈데 베데 마뇨 몽베 와라 베데 직 쇼네 베 텐데 직 쇼선나나 아니 베데 냐와스야게 베 둥에 메세바 녀야 텐데 직라 야 마도야 요바체 다 텐데 게베 다첨부 쉬우지 숨부라 나베 쇼나라
So therefore, in the Tibetan the literature, where we find other explanations of other religious traditions, such as Hinduism. The only Hinduism, the standpoint of Hinduism, the Hindus, the tenets, the 6 types of Hindu tenets are explained in detail in the Tibetan Buddhist texts. But other than that, we cannot find any other tenets or other philosophical belief and other religious tradition systems cannot be found in the Tibetan texts. So it is therefore I'm not sure how the other religious traditions would actually explain this hell realms and so forth. But the Buddha's in the Buddhist scriptures, in the Buddha Dharma, in the various scriptures, we find these explanations and the teachings on the hell realms and the reason why we take a rebirth within these hell realms and law realms and so forth. And then it talks about the suffering, the different kinds of suffering that has been experienced by the hell beings in the hell realms. And then on the contrary, how one can actually prevent oneself from taking rebirth within those hell realms. Not only that, but also how one can actually, jettison all those negative thoughts and emotions. By jettisoning all those negative thoughts and emotions, and one will be able to finally be able to gain the complete state of enlightenment, to be able to accomplish this perfect knowledge, compassion, and the power continuation. And then if one is unable to sever and obliterate those negative thoughts and emotions, then this due to those arisal of those negative thoughts and emotions, one engages in the negative actions of the body, speech, and mind, which enables one to accumulate karma, which then lead oneself to the hell realms. So those are the explanation that we found in the Buddha Dharma.
어딘데 인데 나중에다 내송송게 동네에다 기부충을 qabla 기부충을 가사데 개와치만 것도 된다니게 가사들어 대라야 아니 지 개와치만 것도 된다니게 말아야 당보 아니 내송게 동네에 삼제 아니 내송래 단대 걸로 지게로 아니 내송송게 동네에 송게 여와 내송송게 동네에 삼네 아니 그 내송숨라야 마지에게 탑시 잡어도 가르치기 그래서나 아니 잠조체 아니 메기주도 송거와 내송송라 마지에게 탑들라 개와 지망이 손라야 마지에게 탑들라 니 아니 군주를 잡수 줘봐다 렌데 추시 송와서 데 렌데 되나라 메기와주도 송거와 어디래도
So in the Buddha Dharma, the solution to not falling into is not falling into this law realms and to be able to prevent oneself from falling into law realms requires a perfect practice of the small scopes. All the practice that we find in the small scopes is to sever the causes and conditions which will result oneself to taking rebirth in 3 law realms. It is for this, in the practice of small scopes, where it emphasizes on the practice of taking refuge in 3 jewel Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, which will then be followed by the observation of 10 virtuous actions and abandoning the 10 non-virtuous actions on the basis of genuine appreciation to the law of cause and effect.
제가 제가 근데 이디 좀 발이야 기부 충옥이 된도 니와디 개와 치마디 코르베나라 윤조기 안을 하다 미 고반잔지 손자 아니 거기 아니 지 개와 치마 응물 하미 고반 두야 코라 코르베나라 윤조기 취지 줍두 좀 발이야 아니 거기 귤라야 니중기 삼바디 제국이 요 말에 니중 주마마 임바디 제국이 요 말에 아니 nyumong la khati ja gu yo mare khares na ko khobe na de de ge so za nyumong pang gu yo mara che za ko gi ke wa chimang mo do la me ko ba sia de ta cho jik ne de wi na o ze ji ga so re group de bo do ba ji 딱 미기 주디 가란조 폐지 사무야보다는 송도 그러 봐. 근데 가라 점로 된 가란조 지도 그러 봐. 근데 이디 좀 발라야 가란조 기부 충을 주니 또 들려라 버리지.
That's okay. So when you look at the actual practice of the small scopes, the small scope practice, the very objective of small scope practitioners, objective of those practitioners, the practitioner's objective, sorry, is to attain the higher state of rebirth, such as the state of Deva realms, demigods, and the human realms. Those are the objective of the small scope practitioners' objective. And for that, as I explained earlier, requires taking repetition rituals, observation of 10 virtuous actions, and abandoning of 10 non-virtuous actions. It is therefore, it doesn't require generation of renunciations, and nor it requires, applying antidotes towards grasping at self and grasping at self-cherishing mind.
어딘데 인디 좀 발라야 된대체 되네 기부 딩디게 아니 되네야 다도서 토르 칭네 아니 코발랑 예중 깨고 요래 아니 다코기 된도 예자데 타러와 봐 아니 코발라야 코바 탐제래 심발로 저기 로지 깨고 와 심발로 저기 로지 깨네 텔레야 예중 그 로지 아니 대가라야 다 가서 그래 코발레 타발레 녀모 방고 이버 송자 아니 담에도 베셔 귤을 깨고 요라 어딘데 쟤네 다 되네 쟁원에 최당원에 지야 돼 고라부터 되네 좀 그랬어.
So when it comes to the practitioner of the medium capacity, or the middling scopes, in other words, is such practitioners, the objective of such practitioners is to attain liberation from samsara, for which the perfection of renunciation becomes essential, and it becomes, inevitable generation of renunciations. And similarly, in order to gain liberations, one need to apply a direct antidote towards grasping at grasping at self and phenomena, which requires wisdom realizing selflessness or emptiness. So therefore, from the middling scope onwards, the practice of the middling scope onwards is what I would call is a real, it is a threshold. Well, one is entering into the threshold of actually embarking on actual Dharma path, which enables one not only to, attain higher state of rebirth, but also, enabling one to be able to attain liberation from samsaric existence.
아니 다 대강라야 아니 다 가서 그래 랑자마지 신심지 탐지 코베 동에게 나와를 메시베 닝지게 내려와 닝지 대왕게 심지 탐지게 된도 안 남게 계획 거방 톱야데 톱잘라 샤네 대체도 아니 가서 그래 chanjuki simbe ane tongni tobe sherabde rangyule keba chene ane shiribda jewa pangyala ya bezun chigi tele ya ane kibu chimbo sigirwas.
So then, not only that, but when one is able to complete one's practice on the middling scopes, then one advance oneself to the practice of the great scopes, where the objective of the great scope is not only to just to gain liberation from samsara, but also to attain the state of omniscience. In other words, state of complete enlightenment, which can take place by generating bodhicitta, which is supported by wisdom realizing emptiness, and and progressing from one bhumi, the bodhisattva's bhumi, to another bhumi, and finally to attain complete state of enlightenment with a combination with the union with the integrated path of wisdom, realizing emptiness, and bodhicitta.
Tinte sundu 다 될래야 나게 nembe 잡 tinte chiya yoro mato tinte langbe zore de derwa langbe zore de dere da tinte yidu zambala ya tanda nganzo ani kaso kore da domba ke ma lamden shanjo tije ma chasang reji ma dom gyab yundu zambala ya ani ta tanda degi shungu nala ma sung shanjo ki te tang ani ngaranzo ki samlo para la kepara de bede chenpo shio nirwa shunga nala langa ya ten shasa de la nga zo ge ma janjan juk juk yorwa tela ya be ngune thane lam de la ya ta nga ran zo dewa de ge yode ngune thane dewa yose lam de la jablo ne shinda ji le juk juk be sura ji dwa tinde yin de zamba la ya ani nga ran zo gi ji dewe thön la ya kale jagi yorde ta de jagdan de be de no de ba de ani sebo shibuji cha ang dwa
So not only that, then on top of that, one then, if one is able to, add on one's practice of bodhicitta and wisdom, realizing emptiness, one can, add the practice of secret Chandrayana or the Vajrayana will then become a complete practice of the Buddha Dharma. So, however, it is very, if we look at in our day-to-day experience and our way of doing things and our way of understanding the world around us, it is quite difficult for us because we are not really following the teaching that is given by the Buddha. Though we long to achieve happiness and overcome sufferings, and that achievement of having an aspiration to achieve, genuine aspiration to achieve happiness and overcome suffering, and this kind of aspiration is strongly omnipresent in all of us. However, we are unable to attain that happiness that we long to achieve, and we are unable to eliminate the sufferings that we do not want. It is because we are unable to follow the teachings given by the Buddha. Buddha has given numerous teachings, various teachings suited for all kind of mental dispositions and inclinations of the individual. However, we are unfortunate, in other words, we are unable to really to follow the teachings properly.
tinte sundu zambala ya ane sanje jumdin teki ngaranzo la ya samlo tangda no sha serwa tangbo khorane no sha sung ya de azure pe masi kalabja chenpo chire dwas.
So it is therefore Buddha has stated that our ordinary way of thinking is completely erroneous. So he always said that one should reverse this way of thinking, which is a very pith instructions, although it's a one word, but it's a pith instructions that's given by the Buddha.
ngaranzo ge tanda kaso kore da nosa tewa de yege da tanzin marikba degi da 단지 머리be 와라 쇼제 담요도be 실험마지 장 단지 머리be 와라 쇼장 다 되게 놓으셔서 나랑도 간에 놓도스나 되네 놓도스네 아니 렌자도 커버 봐 이나야 나랑도 당본에다가 간에로 그랬으나 제 다리게 사진이 랭기 풍부되가라야 아니 직 삼로 단단하고데 베디 급주컬로랑 신진로그 삼로 시당대 요레스와 어 사진이 랭기 풍부데 아니 동해와 아니 메자와 다메바 아니 가래 미다바 틴디지리도 ngaranzo기 사진이 랭게 봉부디 아니 다도 줘봐 아니 자와 아니 따바 아니 가래 틴디지리야 진데기 요로와 틴네르가 ngazo 베디 삼로 단다르데 갑줄로 차레스
So we might say lightly by saying that, well, we are remaining under the power or the domination of self-grasping mind. So therefore, we are unable to follow properly the teachings of the Buddha properly. So we might slightly or the likely give these kinds of answers why we are unable to follow the Buddha's teaching properly or accurately. That is one thing, it is true. But if you look at ourselves, not only that, but also you just look at ourselves, the rebirth that we have taken at this point, which is indeed considered as one of the high rebirth, comparatively, one of the high rebirth. But when you look at the physical aggregate that we have at this point, is which is a contaminated physical aggregate that we have. This, and then the way we look at, the way we understand the nature of this contaminated aggregate is completely mistaken. And our erroneous way of not only that grasping at self and phenomena, but also we have an erroneous way of looking at this contaminated physical body, the ordinary physical body, because this body in reality, it is impermanent, it is nature of suffering, it is impure, it is selflessness. This is the four qualities, four characteristic, which actually the real four characteristic of this our physical body. However, due to our ignorance, we're looking at this body as a permanent, pure, and objective existence, and free of sufferings and so forth.
어디네 인도 좀 발이야 ngaranzo기 lengi 풍부디 아니 sakji siddhi zambala ya thako nyomong da jeba sundu sakji sikidwa. Ani nyelen siddhi chik thoro chiklin chiya tila nyelen sikidwa. Ta pungbu siddhi ani chik su ta mangbo chi churu cheba sinadu ena yam dulu chu sakba sinemidu. Chida ngaranzu ne chikla ya ani ne ki pungbu lagi marwa. Ani ne mangbo chi ya pung shanjo tila ani ne ku pungbu sikidwa. 다 되나라야 가서 그래 풍부가 요데 풍부지신데 다나 풍부스 라고야 그 김센터고 되고라야 아니 지 가서 그래 누르망 뭐 사시안 줘도 버리지 다 되나네 쪼르고도 속고 풍부들라 예서래 다른 아란주 르 슬라도 자가게랑 까야스기도 하들라야 까야스야들라 들사 스기르지 거기 예서라 봐 어딘데 전에 살제니 렌지 풍부스도 코 대세 자다데 된데 얘기도
So the contaminated physical aggregate that we have, why it is called contaminated? Because it is remaining under the power of karma and negative thoughts and emotions. The karma and inflections, in other words. So such contaminated aggregates are actually given rise by it is previous contaminated aggregates of one's previous life. And it is a substantial result of the contaminated, aggregates of one's previous aggregates. So, so there, the word itself, it's a skanda. It's actually pungpo in Tibetan, which is a compilation of many other, factors. It's not a single entity or not a single atom, which becomes an aggregate for the pungpo or the skanda. The skanda pungpo itself is actually the compilation of many other factors. For instance, think about our the physical aggregates or the form aggregates. The form aggregates, it's a single form aggregates, but when you look at how it compiled, how it become an aggregate, or how it become a pungpo or the kaya in Sanskrit, or is something that is a numerous compilation of atoms, or the numerous atoms, the compilation of numerous atoms, which forms this form aggregates, or the the rupa rupakaya. Yep.
어딘데 손도 담발이야. 아, 사실 니랭기 풍부되려야 메가베 로지 대 돈되고 로지 맞지나나 아니 군중dem바 빵되고 로지 군중dem바데 빵야가 로지 지금 말아 군중dem바 빵되고 로지 맞지나나 아니 담에도베 시럽데 세야라 베전 지금 말아 담에도베 시럽 세야라 베전 마체비 이비이나 아니 다 왕제라도 마스나 가장 단지 말이 배워라 쇼데도 안 가나도 커버라 거야게 규진 쪼레 되데 있어레스.
So when one is unable to see the faults of this contaminated physical aggregates, one will not have a genuine aspiration to jettisoning this contaminated physical aggregates. When such aspiration to abandoning one's contaminated physical aggregates is unable to attain and unable to achieve, then suddenly one will not be able to have a genuine aspiration to eliminating the origin of sufferings. In other words, kunjung, or origin of sufferings. If one is unable to generate a genuine aspiration to eliminating origin of sufferings, then one will not be able to have a genuine aspiration to generate wisdom which understands selflessness of physical aggregates. It is because of this we will then always remain under the dominations or under the control of ignorance, which then, confines us within this unenlightened existence or the samsaric existence.
어딘데 인데 알았어 그래다. 나랑도 덴바시디 베디 생각나라 냐데야데 숙침부시 최로 꾸마치야 숙침부지 용도 덴마이나 아니 지 당아란조 지 냐외다 텐데기 단다 코랑 송송 나시리 냐와도 동해다 되서 지 때문에 지 숙침보르지 지가 재미나 안에 되게 다니게 종지기나 전달도 다가도 내중 맞이나 아니 다 대심del랑로라고 저래도
So it is therefore one's driving force for engaging in the practice must be based on understanding of Four Noble Truths. Understanding of Four Noble Truths really become a key factor for fueling of one's practice, the progression of one's practice and spiritual path. Otherwise, even though one may have a little fear and uneasy feeling towards explanation of hell realms, as the Claire has mentioned earlier, that since we do not remember the suffering that we have gone through in this hell realms in our previous numerous life, but we don't remember that at all, even a fraction. So we'll not have much, genuine fear. So with this kind of, explanation of, hell realms and suffering of hell realms and predator realms and so forth, will not really become, it doesn't seems like becoming a very driving force, the actual driving force for engaging in the practice of Dharma.
가란도 유곰자스나 다리나 텔레야 동해dembe 님이 곰 안데 제로 공중demba 동해dembe 님이 도절로라 코제 안지 가서 그래 어들이 중소한데 제로 공중demba 방도 걸로게 아니 다 공중demba 방발이야 단지 말을 베게다 안에 담에도 베시라 제간데 스큐르 지가 유메데 제주당 근데 제 안에 다 되네 이제 동반이 또 공부 있나다 안 되들라야 양지 신심지 딩도 카파버네 신심지 안에 지 동해 대변 나르주 된제 바 삼로다 안 대왕기 될라야 닝지다고 게 안에 전주그 섬다고 보면 된대 체제 아 삼로르 지당에 있나 검자기 있나 검 된대지 잡나 덴바시 그토네 검자비 있나 야보 있어레스
So instead, I would think that if one engages in practice of meditation on Four Noble Truths, will really become fuel for one's practice, which will really become a driving force for one's practice, the progression of one's spiritual practice on the spiritual path. For that, I would think that if we begin with meditating on suffering, nature of cyclic existence, suffering, in other words, the suffering that we ourselves undergo at this point, and think about the faults of those sufferings, the nature of the sufferings. When we really come to a proper understanding, the precise understanding of the sufferings, then one will be able to shift one's practice of meditation to the origin of sufferings, how the suffering coming into being. When one is able to find the origin of sufferings, then one should have a genuine aspiration to eliminate this origin of sufferings. When it comes to the elimination of this origin of suffering, then one should proceed one's practice of engaging in the meditation on selflessness, which is the antidote towards grasping at self of person and self of phenomena. So this is how we can really engage in the actual practice of Dharma. And then furthermore, then just as we ourselves finding within this, remaining within this suffering nature of cyclic existence, so too all other mother sentient beings who are undergoing similar sufferings, the suffering that we are undergoing. So therefore, not only that you have a genuine aspiration to overcome your own sufferings, but also you will have a genuine aspiration to overcoming the suffering of other sentient being, which then leads oneself to the practice of bodhicitta.
어디 딘데르지 디 나랑게 삼주 딘데르지 인스로라 아니 다데네 아 디가서 그래 단다 데 시딩나라야다 녀외 동에도 조서 녀외 동에지라 다 둘이 동에들이자 대지라 이다게 동에도 승구도 다 대소 만조 마 샤르샤 조샤나 도 되기도 와다데 미 람림다 코니 방딘다 지버리샤 싱아란 속에 녀와 이다 튼두스기로 와 베겔람르나라 녀와체 대지라 튼두 동에 송 이다데 타마텔라 샤도와 안테나라 지버리샤 당번 녀와체 대지라 튼두체 이다데 타마텔라 샤샤 다디 텐데스 샤샤 다디 남들 남들라잖아 대 텐데스 샤고비 좀 젠디 용아요 텐스 다른 가데 테마서 아니 어딘데 레샤스다
So now, those are our, our core practice, the practice that we need to focus, as I mentioned earlier, practice on the meditation on Four Noble Truths and so forth. So now we will be continuing reading the verse of the letter to friend, and we will be dealing again with the suffering nature of this hell realms and so forth. But the sequential order of those are very similar to the sequential order that is given in Lama Tsongkhapa's Lamrim Chemu, or the great teachings on the stages of the path to enlightenment, which first teaches about the suffering of the hell realms, and then suffering of animal realms, and suffering of predator realms, or the hungry ghost realms. And in the same manner, we also find in this letter to friend, it talks about first suffering of hell realms, and suffering of hell realms, suffering of animal, which will then be followed by the explanation of the suffering of the predator realms. So we're not going to go through the precise explanation of that. It's quite clear in this verse itself. So we will be reading through the verse.
어딘데 레샤스데네 데토라 티버르던데 예나
But before we do that, if you have any questions, we'll entertain some questions and answer.
Thank you very much for that explanation. It was excellent and very useful.
The shibuji pembo chungso to sheshuwa yinsungdo darayanda mede kolum nabde.
제가 내 나도 게 가서 다 이슈 측은하라 제비나 안에 다시 자네 군조 통로 도어레스 드레스기 여레스기도 당아 조인비나 단냐와다 된데게 지금 동에 망버시어라 나와게 다 인데
kundu inyewa yorte yorta kela.
알레르베
Yore.
레 인데 네 삼발야다 지 냠레 투기도서다 다가로다 냠게 마투기도서 다 디니마 지 다체 다레기 체데 마 조르디 군일야 셈나라 지 가서 그래다 남자 지중래지 예를 튕기도 다 찍기 군주 총라 두고 예 전상 원에 전에 군주 총라 내게 예나 매나 코지 가서 그래 생나 기부래지로 다 야줘야 예 전에 거 대보차로 그러 다 찍기
kundu di inyewa dosanda inyewa doji mure. Dini
안에
thaya mer.
안에
The inyewa doni thaya mer tabe kono ko tigero tegyanre. Dini yaku chene kunju otung dosanda yang kunju otung dagar deji ma. Ige tabe tabarang juu ichi duks tiyarabshi duks kote namyo endere sungdo.
안에나스 제가 된데지 메르쳐서 군주 총라 두고 그랬어 랍사 아니 지 시간로 뭐지 콘수 디 된데기 去了，一些个去了，这个台湾这个都是，这个老的就参与进来挺少，当然是对样子，但是他的年龄谁是这嘛凶，俺那点点这年娃有俺的好好，这天，俺那这天天天的，但是那了这现在着嘛，我那个面着的。
I'm not sure about how, you know, other religious tradition explains about, heaven and hell, that their belief system of heaven and hell, such as the religious tradition of Judaism, Christianity, and so forth. But when it comes to the Buddhism, when we go through all kind of explanations of the hell realms and so forth, the suffering of hell realms, predator realms, and so forth, and people might become more anxious and uneasy, unease of their mind by, listening to such instructions of the suffering of hell realms and so forth, because my limited understanding of the other religious traditions, when they pass away from this life, the present life, they will suddenly, right away they will be going to, they will be, wouldn't say a rebirth, but they will become, their soul will be in a resting peace with the God realms, and the God will be taken in the heaven. So therefore, in comparison to the Buddhism, and those followers of those religious traditions will be, with the less burden. They don't have to think of all those suffering nature of the cyclic suffering natures and so forth.
俺这弄不来点吧，那个嘞，他不过都做了现在学过个了，懂得有，看完那懂得有的，懂得有的是你现在过那不过都自己，那我那他天天了做嘛，你是那我的进不那个做嘛，你天天吃个药。安尼他都把这干的这懂得推荐这不就错呢？去了的话的懂这个医不这不的是就下个的话，的这可是我嘞。不过都知道多了，偏个啥的听个那个什么，对吧？现在这个一边就是看对那的推荐的就当的那或者懂得是现在是他们的家事了吧？我说弄不多那他这这不都是多是差个么的，我们都是这全部差别呢，是哪红了怕是哪红了怕是专门你给听的差个多，哦，对的这个不着急。
So it's just like the one simple example that I can share with you all is that in our hometown back in Tibet, we have a parents and an elderly have this tendency of scaring us, the little boys and girls, by saying, "Do not go in a dark place." So you will end up seeing, or we will come across with the, ghost or so on and so forth, and that makes us scared all the time. Whereas here in the United States and some other Western countries, I would see, instead of saying that, they have a celebration of the Holy One that, which is, displaying all those, scary image in their doorsteps and their yards and so forth. And instead of kids will become scared of that, kids will take it as a, as a celebration or enjoyment. So which I think is something that is actually good, because we have this kind of culture, and the tendency of this elderly people just scaring us and not letting us go somewhere in the dark, especially the girls. They are just always warning them not to go out in the dark. We will come across with ghosts or non-human, spirits and so forth, and that makes us very vulnerable.
We don't have that in England. We have the opposite, like the Tibetans. We have something other than Halloween, where it's very scary, because that's the day the ghosts come out.
Andrew, can you repeat that?
Oh,
Carefully.
I think this is cultural, because in England we have something called All Hallows Eve. That's
Okay.
at the same time, but on that day the ghosts come out and it's very scary.
Okay. Tanda Quran the Andrew Quran bine tanda England nirwa.
아니.
Quran begin so the pige ya tende kasoro duchen tende tse yore sa ante bana je ya chi kunzo chi ru somje je ne ni chi su kadro char tende yo mara ya de ni ma de ya ko chi mima yin da ka jungbe duchen rab su si ji je ne ya kangal te senar te sungure sa tante bana thag mara sa kono speak ande inje lumba yin bena
아니.
Yeah.
na yore sa ko tende yo mar sungdu
아니.
In Italy, if you've been good, you get candy, but if you've been bad, you get a lump of coal.
Okay. Da Italy limbena de ya mi ya ku yembena de la des shana des yo mares mi duga chegin digen del shana yor su del.
아니.
Des ko Europe ki lumbena ne dos yamada mar yongo se ko kisa darsa de pigene Europe ne da yor ba di.
아니. 나스.
Pigen da yor. Kon France ki 장모 저 de ba ji da yor de. Dujin.
아니. 아니. 나스. 나스 나스.
I don't know the custom very well, but in Mexico, they have the Day of the Dead. And they honor the dead, and everyone dresses up in scary masks and skeleton costumes and things like that, and honor the dead.
Da Mexico le ya da de kon so ke 치유 님을 쓰지 요래서
아니.
치유 님을 쓰야 돼 님을 돼야 다단데 대바나 신체전에요 미강가야 지 견류 지 체럽 진데 지지 안데럽 스테이지 전 치료 대바줘야다 안데럽 대야한테 된데 쉬어디 잡을 텐데 레서 간데 대바다 간자
아니.
대바한테 근데 돈데 되진 제시도 봐 멕시코에 된데 요래서 내 군주대 돈데 되진 민디 카가르시 비게디 치위 뒤스지 치위 님을 쓰지 저도 와
아니. 나스. 나스 나스. 아니.
Yeah.
근데 동네데 가르이나 건조기디 간조 이나다 미시네 안에 된 남시들이 라그러 건조 동네데 라기나
더 멕시코 그러봐
지당 건조데 동네 투진 단계 망사다 디 말에 이슈 말에
이슈래 라고 단데 디 돈데 미시거데 랑게 된데 세고 아이 마이레샤
안에나스
군주 단데 당에 냐마냐마 고조르다 다 군주 마지미 라베 이겨마다 냐마냐마 고조르디 근데 프랑스 기 장고셔 대바 진데 중국으로 스티디 군주 비게 사지 시그널이야 단데 진짜 주비게 근데 담주 단데 거소리 지세 숨 소주디 로직이 뒤 가서 간전히 잡번도 중립에게 나가럽시래도 와
안에나스
로 타메게 안데 지 님을 타마들이야 아니 지 동리야 라이 뒤지 동리야 라베 뒤지 지도 와 갑디디 그 시나 제블레 알레 파시는 오션에 그래서 해럽시 엔 동리 텐데 속세 엔데 익더 로기르 땅이 냐마냐마 고견인다 대수 나베 가도 제와 제리아 딘데 던디 겐라 트랩나 제리 엔데 트레지 젠 트레시 나리아 아니야 인지지기 로스 대시 겹스 냐마 냐마다 니동 숨시데 바 계절에 게 겐라 개인적으로 송전 나버 갑래 콘스 딘데 저들은 중벌에
안에나스
된샤 다 콘솔 마치 디 코노소미 송에 요러 바다 딜레 세우체 먼저 세우셔라 신고 말
나스
Yeah. Yeah, if in England, they say if you didn't give any food or drink to anybody, then the fire is going to come and burn you to your bare bones.
what will burn can you Andrew
If you have never given
anything to them
or food to anybody else,
okay
then they say that the fire will come and burn you all the way to your bare bones.
Oh, okay. 딱 된절이야 다지 근데 칼라로 단 된데 대기 두신 갑래 직 제로 된데 맞제베는 아니 군조게 직 소소야 직 너버 전부 된데 당그레스 직 메자 된데 연구를 했음도 사 근데 기타 코너스 이시럽 된데 예브라도 와
안에 다 등아도 찍어 저거래도 아니다. 이런다 보다. 안에. 되네 가서 된대지 인사래다. 그지? 라서 안 다가나 샤고면다.
So we'll stop here with this today.
Let's see, the dedication prayers on 23 and 24, again with auspicious wishes on page 28.
예와데 된다 저와 근라 가베나 케브라 지즈 로산 타바이 템베 냠보 린도 세지 쇼 예 조제 메도 다 리저 리제 니데 니마데 산제 신도 메데 고와이 조거 남다 신하 주바로 쇼 양다 라마다 체메 취지 벨라 동세지 사다 남지 요데라조네 도제 창게 고방 유로도 쇼 우제 rabdenje nanga chile chujuru yebada losan dembe deme sakumji jore mese dadu ne yuruje korbe shingam su pendan dewa malu jumene jere sewa dinzi yazo yi shabe sidi balu de yuruje Shedra Kemba Dang Kundu Sambo De Yang De Jin Teda Kunyi Jesu Dalo Ji Gewa Teda Tamje Rabdo Shebe Gyawa Tamje Yi Ngowa Kala Chodu Ngawa De Dashin Kewe Zawa De Guya Sambo Juji Rabdo Waraji 알았어.
라서 경라 심잖아 거